Who's going? That's the question you always ask when you get invited to a party, isn't it? Who's going to be there? Because people make the party. So it doesn't matter how nice the party is or how nice of a location it is or what's going to be happening at the party. The question everybody asks is, who's going to be there? I mean, is it going to be people I don't like? Is it going to be my friends? And so what you do is you open up the invite. And you're like, all right, who's at that thing? So you start looking. You're like, all right, is Dwight Schrute going to be there? Definitely going, right? If it's going to be a bunch of people that you don't really like, you're going to be like, there's no way I'm going to that thing. And today we're talking about what it means to be in the presence of God and what it means to have God go with us. See, if God wants to meet with his people, it's really important for him to be along for the journey. And we're going to see that in Exodus 33. So look with me in Exodus 33, verse 15. Pick up our story right here. It says this, "If your presence does not go," Moses responded to him, "don't make us go up from here. How will it be known that I and your people have found favor with you unless you go with us? I and your people will be distinguished by this from all the other people on the face of the earth." The Lord answered Moses, "I will do this very thing you have asked, for you have found favor with me, and I know you by name." Now, as we've been walking through the book of Exodus, we've seen this story unfold where God brings his people out of Egypt where they were in slavery and brings them to Mount Sinai, where he will reveal himself to them by telling them the Ten Commandments and showing up in his presence and his power. And God is not just trying to get people to be obedient to him, he wants them to love him. He wants them to be his people. He wants to know them. And so the Ten Commandments in many ways is an invitation to a relationship, not simply a list of things to do. But the people of God hear the Ten Commandments and immediately do what? They break all of them. They create an idol, a golden calf, and they worship it. And as a result, God is tired with their disobedience and tells Moses, "Moses, I'm ready to start all over. How would you like to be the father of a great nation? I'm going to just wipe them out, start over, start from the very beginning." And Moses pleads with God that God would not destroy the people. But God still isn't sure that he wants to go be with them. He's not sure if he wants to be in that relationship he originally offered them. And he hasn't committed to going with them into the promised land, which is where we find Moses. Moses is like, "God, please go with us. Go with us, please. Don't leave us. Don't send somebody else to lead us. You need to come with us." He desires the presence of God. And what Moses is saying is this. He's saying, "God, if you're not in it, we don't want it. If you're not in this, we don't want it. We don't want to go to Canaan without you, because it won't be the promised land if you're not with us." Which brings us to an important conversation that we just need to have as a community. You know, I think many of us live lives where we're trying to get God to do things for us, but we're not necessarily wanting God for who he is. So a question we need to ask is this: do we seek God's face or do we seek his hand? By God's face, I mean his presence. Do we want his presence or do we simply want his hand, what he can do for us? Because often we can see God simply as being useful, like he can help us. We ask for him to heal us or to protect us or to give us something or to help us win, because we're Americans. We love to win, don't we? It's all about winning. And yet, deep down, the question comes to us: do we desire God's power or do we desire his presence? Do you want God, for who he is? Or do you want his power? I'm going to be really honest. A lot of times, I just want his power. I want the power to do what I want with my life. I want the power to be able to get what I want out of this life. I want the power to get my kids to obey me. I want power. You do too. We want power. But God desires us to know him. He wants presence. He wants presence. He wants us to be the kind of people who want to be in his presence and who love him, because God is worthy of worship simply because of who he is. And so Moses says, God, I want to know you. I want to see you. Please don't leave us, because we don't have an identity outside of you. How will we even know who we are if you're not in the middle of us? If we're not known by you, if you don't go with us, how will we even know who we are? And God tells Moses, I'm going to go because you found favor with me and I know you by name. Isn't that cool? God says, I know who you are, Moses. I know your name. I know who you are, and I'm going to go with you because I want that relationship. So Moses then doubles down. This is what he says in verse 18. It says, Moses said, please let me see your glory. Moses asks for something that no one else had ever asked for. He wants to see God's glory and his presence. And I don't think he even really knows what he's asking for, because all he's seen to this moment is a burning bush. He's seen God do power. He's seen God come down from the mountain and speak out of a cloud. But now he's like, I want to see the real you. I want to know you. It reminds me of sometimes when we see somebody, we know about somebody and we admire them and we want to be friends with them and we think that we would be buddies. Like, think every time you watch Fixer Upper, you're like, Chip and Jo would be awesome. Wouldn't it be cool if we just went over to a house for dinner? For me, I love Michael Jordan, GOAT, greatest basketball player who's ever lived. Wears shoes every Sunday. Could you imagine like hanging out with Jordan? Be like, hey Jordan, we're gonna go hang out. Like, let's go over and like watch basketball together. Like, what would that be like? It would be awkward because like there's not really a whole lot of space for us to be in a relationship. I mean, he's really famous. Like he's super successful. He's almost like at a whole different field. Now imagine doing that with God. Like, God makes Michael Jordan look like a midget, right? I mean, his greatness is far more than anything you could ever imagine. And Moses is like, God, I want to know you and your glory. I want to know you. And God could have been like, you know what? You don't have any space for that. Like, you have no standing. Like, why would you even think that that's a possibility? And sometimes we feel the same way too, don't we? We feel like, man, God is so big. Like, why would he even care about me? I'm nobody. Like, why would God want to be in a relationship with me? Just think about this. God says to Moses, he says, I know you, I know your name, and you've found favor with me. God says that to you too. And God says, I will let all my goodness go before you. That's what he says next, verse 19. He said, I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim the name of the Lord before you. I'll be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and I'll be compassionate on whom I'll have compassion. So God says, I'm going to let all of my goodness go in front of you. All of my glory, all of my power. It's going to go before you, Moses, and I'm going to tell you my name. I'm going to reveal to you my identity, my core self. I'm going to show it to you, and I'm going to do that because I can do that whenever I want to. I can be compassionate to whoever I want to be compassionate to. In verse 20, God says, but he added, you cannot see my face, for humans cannot see me and live. The Lord said, here's a place near me. You are to stand on the rock, and when my glory passes by, I will put you in the crevice of the rock and cover you with my hand until I pass by. And then I will take my hand away, and you'll see my back, but my face will not be seen. Now, God now says, I'm going to let my goodness go by you, but Moses, you can't see my face because my face is something beyond what you can comprehend. Humans can't look at me and live. So when you climb to the top of the mountain, there's a spot that I want you to hide in, and I'm going to cover you with my hand as I walk by to protect you. And after all my glory goes past you, after I've declared who I am, then you can look on my back. Now, some of us go like, is God really that awe-inspiring? Like, how could he be that powerful that you can't even look at him and live? Well, consider this. Like, our sun is not even like the biggest kind of star that's in the universe, but you can't look at it very long, can you? We had the eclipse a couple weeks ago. Remember that? Like, we canceled school for like half an eclipse. I mean, it wasn't even a full eclipse. We canceled school for it anyway. We all got our glasses on, and we went outside, and the shadows got kind of weird, and we stared at it for a little bit. Some of you, I know, were like kind of foolish, and you didn't listen to your eye doctor. You're like, I'm going to look at it anyway, right? But you knew that you couldn't look at it very long. Why? Because you'll go blind. God made that star. He was like, I'm going to make the sun, moon, and stars with a word. Imagine the glory and majesty of the one who created it. God's like, listen, you can't look at my face and live, Moses, but I'm going to give you as much of me as you can handle. And I think that's the kind of heart that we should have as people. Be the kind of people who say, we want as much of God as we can handle. God, I want to know you. I want to see your glory. God, as much of you as you'll let me see, I want that. Why? Because when I do, I can have a relationship with you. And for some of us, that's just a little bit. But as we continue to know him, he continues to reveal more and more and more of himself. And it becomes more and more beautiful. We become more and more in awe of who he is. So God does that. Skip down to chapter 34, verse 5. It says this: the Lord came down in a cloud, stood with him there, and proclaimed his name, the Lord. The Lord passed in front of him and proclaimed, the Lord is a compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger and abounding in faithful love and truth, maintaining faithful love to 1,000 generations, forgiving iniquity, rebellion, and sin. But he will not leave the guilty unpunished, bringing the consequences of the father's iniquity on the children and grandchildren to the third and fourth generation. God comes down in a cloud. This is a significant detail because he's covering his presence until he passes by Moses. And there he proclaims his name and reveals who he is and teaches us a lot about what God is all about. You see, up to this point, Moses didn't know that God was loving. Where do you get the idea that God is love anyway? Like, you may not see that in nature. Like, nature can be very cruel sometimes. But God reveals his character here and says, I am a God who loves and forgives and gives faithful love to thousands of generations, which basically means that you can't out-sin God's love. You can't go too far. He will continue to pursue you. But then he flips the coin to the other side of the coin, which is, he says, I'm also a God who does not leave the guilty unpunished and brings the consequences of sin on the children and grandchildren of those who do that. So you find God holding two things in tension. It's a paradox. He's both loving and he's just. He's both righteous and he forgives. So the question is, how can he do both? How can he be both ultimately loving and ultimately just? The only way he can do that is through Jesus. See, God sent Jesus so that he could bring sinners back home and bring them back into his family. That's why God sent Jesus, so that his wrath and his justice towards our sin wouldn't fall upon us, but it would fall upon himself. That's the power of the gospel. God is able to do both those things and allow us to really be in a relationship with himself through Jesus, which is why he's such a big deal. You know, it's fascinating. This story actually has a mirror image that happens thousands of years later. Do you know when Jesus walked the earth, he went to the top of a high mountain. He brought a couple of his disciples with him, Peter, James, and John, kind of his core group of friends, and he brings them to the top of the mountain. And as he's there, much to their surprise, Moses shows up, and so does Elijah. Now, we don't know how God worked that out, but we do know that it's significant that they're there because Moses is considered the very first prophet, and Elijah is considered the greatest prophet. And so they stand in front of Jesus, and they start talking. Peter does the most lame thing ever, okay? The thing Peter always does is he always says the thing that's not supposed to be said. He goes, hey, Jesus, this is awesome you guys are here. Let's build you guys some tents. Like, why tents? I don't know. But he's like, we're going to build some tents, and you guys can just sit up there, and then we'll like let everybody come see you, Moses and Elijah. This is going to be great. It's a great plan. Everybody's going to follow you because you got all these guys here. And as he's doing that, a cloud comes down, just like it did in Exodus 34. And God says this. He says, "This is my beloved son with whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him." I can't help but think that the first time that Moses was on the mountain, God hid his face. The second time, he got to stare into the eyes of his Savior, Jesus. God revealed the path for God to be both righteous and loving in Jesus. And here we find Jesus offering us an opportunity for his presence today. Because God is faithful. He always is. And his favor never goes away. His favor is faithful. And you see Moses then turning and worshiping. Look back with me in Exodus 34, verse 8. It says, immediately Moses knelt low on the ground and worshiped. And then he said, "My God, if indeed I have found favor with you, my Lord, please go with us, even though this is a stiff-necked people. Forgive our iniquity and our sin and accept us as your own possession." And the Lord responded, "Look, I'm making a covenant. In the presence of all your people, I'll perform wonders that have never been done in the whole earth or in any nation. All the people you live among will see the Lord's work, for what I am doing with you is awe-inspiring." Moses continues to ask God to go with him. It's almost like he's a broken record. He says, "Please don't let us go into the promised land without you. If you're not in it, we don't want it. Please go with us." And God says, "I will go with you because I'm creating a covenant." In the Bible, a covenant is kind of like a contract, except very different. A contract, you keep your side of the contract, and if the other person doesn't keep theirs, then you can walk away. They break the contract. But covenant says we're going to make a commitment not based on how good we are, but on how good God is. And God says, you're not good enough to keep this covenant, so I'm going to hold both sides of it for you. I'm going to do your side and my side. And ultimately, when you sin, I'm going to send Jesus so you can have a path back home to me. That's why God desires us to experience his presence. Because his power is only understood by knowing who he really is. It's only truly experienced when he walks among his people. And he goes on to say this. He says, "I'm going to do awesome things in your presence. So much so that every single person around you will know that I'm with you." Now, church, I just want to take a moment and just talk about this because I think God's hand is on us. I think God is doing something powerful in our church. Every week, we're seeing new people come. We're seeing people get saved. We're seeing people get baptized. We're seeing life change. It's awesome. And God has done a great work on the church. We've had his favor. But the danger is that we continue seeking the favor and the power of God rather than the presence of God. And it's my heart's desire that we would be the people who are known not for the excellence of our events or how fun it is to come to church. Those things are great. But more than anything, we would be known for the fact that we long for the presence of God and that he dwells among us. That God is here. That's what we want more than anything else. We want God's presence. We want his favor. We want his face. That would be the heart cry of our church, that we want more than anything else is to know God and that he would be with us. That we'd say it's always only Jesus. That he's our desire. And here's the thing. It's not something that just your pastoral staff can do for you. It's not just something that your parents can do for you. It's something you need to be a part of. So what if it looked like around here that it wasn't just some of us who said, I want God, I want as much of God as I can handle, but it was all of us. That your walk with Jesus would be centered on the glory of God, that you long for God's presence, that's your heart's desire. That you would say, show me your glory, God. I want you with all my heart. Just like Moses, you're saying, God, Give me as much of you as you'll let me have. I'll take all of it. Why? Because when you do, you experience something that can't be manufactured, that can't be made up. You experience your purpose and who you were made to be. And I think a lot of us walk through life constantly just trying to get to a place of success. Like we're climbing a mountain ourselves. We're trying to get to the very top. But here's the truth of the world. You can get to the top of the mountain. You can win at your life. You can win at your job or influence or success. And you can get to the very top. And you'll find that it's a very lonely place if God's not there with you. You get to a place where you're like, man, I'm still me and I'm still empty. And so the time to choose what it is that you're looking for in life is now. To say, God, I want you. I want to meet with you. I want you to be the centerpiece of my life. I want to put you as the foundation of my heart. That's what I want more than anything else. So I want to carve out some space today, just a little bit longer of a reflection time. To just give you an opportunity before you get really busy with the rest of your day to say, God, I want you. Show me your glory, God. I want what Moses saw. I want that for my life and my children and my story. So just take some space, close your eyes. You know, some of you maybe don't go to church very often. You're here and you're like, I don't know what that even means. And yet you may still feel intrigued and want to know. So maybe the first thing you just need to do is tell God that you want to know him. Like, God, if you're even out there, would you show yourself to me? If you're real, I want to see it. There's others in this room. You've gone to church. You know the answers. But you've not been seeking God's face, his presence. It's been a long time since you have. Today you can say, God, I want you. For you. More than what you do for me. Here's what I know about God. Even though he's the greatest being who's ever existed, he has time for you. God, I pray for anybody who's hearing my voice. I pray that our heart would be all yours. Every aspect of our life, we would say, God, if you're not in it, I don't want it. Because I want you more than anything else. So God, rest upon us. Let this place be a place where your Spirit lives. It starts here now. It's yours, Jesus. Amen. Thank you for connecting with us today. Please take a minute to share this message with a friend and click subscribe to be notified when we share new, uplifting content that will encourage you and help you grow deeper in your faith. Click the link on the screen to get connected with us and support how God is using this ministry to set the world alight for Jesus Christ. We're praying for you. We'll see you next time.